When darkness descends from the sky, evil will rise and spread across the land. There isn't a heart that doesn't harbor evil, especially in the midst of chaos. So, let's create a warrior without one, the Shadow Pokémon.
This is it, the finale and the climax of this epic adventure in my conceptual third game for fan-favorite spin-offs, Pokemon Coliseum and Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness, with a brand new story and cast of characters within an expanded version of the Orre region, with even more Shadow Pokemon, including mutated Shadow Warp Pokemon based on the 7 Deadly Sins. In the last chapter, we left off at yet another cliffhanger, as the hero from the first game, Wes, finally appeared, but ended up betraying the hero of this game, Zion, ripping out his core, the key to the shadow summoning device, and hurling Zion's lifeless robotic body off the dome into the volcano, where it was to be engulfed by the rising lava. As Wes revealed himself as the Shadow Master of Neo Team Cypher, pulling all of the strings so far. Now, for those of you who played Pokemon Coliseum, you may not be too surprised that Wes, being a former protagonist, ended up being the villain for 2 reasons. The first being he started the first game as a villain, part of Team Snag'em. He may have been the protagonist, but he was never really a hero. He betrayed Team Snag'em and not only stole the Stag Machine for himself, for reasons unknown, but literally blew up their base of operations at the start of the game and drove off cheesing. That's pretty cold. I mean, just look at that evil grin, come on. And although his motives for joining Team Snag'em in the first place and once again stealing the Snag Machine were never really revealed, it's not a good look, so I thought I'd give him some backstory to fill in the blanks. That being said, I won't reveal all of his motives quite yet, as this will be explored more in this chapter throughout his actions. But it's also important to note that the ambiguity of his actions in the first games may be because the original creator of the series has stated since that he originally planned to make Wes the final villain for the sequel, Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness, but couldn't because Game Freak told him that making the previous hero a villain would be too dark for a Pokemon game. But decades later, the series has gotten more mature with its audience and tackled a lot darker issues such as morality and even death. So I don't think that would be an issue today, and in the creator's defense, the Orre Region's games were always more mature in nature than the mainstream games of the time, so I think they could have easily gotten away with it back in the day. But that's speculated to be the reason why Wes and Rui were both missing from the sequel Gale of Darkness, because they were removed from the game so late because of this decision. But there's even a team found within the data for the game for a final boss that hinted at Wes's return, and looks like it could have been his team, so I decided to give him that team for this game, as I wanted to follow through with the creator's original plan for the character and put my own twist on it to try to justify his actions and flesh his character out even more. Anyways, back to the story. After hurling Zion into the volcano crater, Wes assumed Zion's Pokemon, Mummion and Drekion, would respect him as their true owner. But fortunately, Mummion and Drekion aren't willing to do that, as they truly love Zion, robot or not. Mummion and Drekion make it clear that they are upset with Wes as they growl at him, but Umbreon and Espeon rush to Wes's defense. Before things escalate any further, Twyla appears from high above on Shadow Lugia.
I have the key. We can finally move forward into the final phase of our plan.
As he holds up Zion's core.
Looks like your little puppet will no longer be a thorn in our side. It's a shame. He would have made a real asset if you'd have given me the chance to reprogram him.
It's too risky. He has already gone against his coding. There was something far too human within him.
And that scares you, doesn't it? Because it is a reminder of the humanity within you. That is where it comes from after all, isn't it?
Make no mistake, Twyla. My humanity doesn't scare me, but I have worked far too hard to let it blind me from what must be done.
You know she will come looking for him. For you. Are you ready for that?
Let her come. She had her chance to fight alongside me and she rejected me. But she can't stop me. No one can. Now let's go before this place goes up in flames.
Oh, goody. You know I love a good fireworks show.
Twyla Giddy jumps up and down, joyfully clapping her hands, before getting on the back of Shadow Lugia. Wes slowly starts walking over to Shadow Lugia, as if he's about to get on it as well.
Oh, were you expecting a ride? Sorry, boss, but I'm no one's chauffeur.
You have to be joking. No one respects or would ever trust you like they do me. You need me just as much as I need you if you plan to conquer.
That's where you're wrong. World domination was always your plan. I'm far more interested in destroying it. Toodaloo!
Twyla then flies away on Shadow Lugia, leaving Wes and Zion's robotic corpse for dead. As moments later, the lab on Dark Isle is seen exploding off in the distance while Twyla is soaring through the sky towards the screen with an evil smirk on her face. The screen then cuts to a cutscene of Mykel and Rui watching the explosion on TV, worried about Zion. Mykel then goes to check in with Zion, only to find his signal has disappeared completely, worrying them even more. Mykel, in shock, then looks closer at the screen to see Twyla in the sky off in the distance on Shadow Lugia, still upset that his Shadow Lugia betrayed him, saying Twyla had to have been behind this, and then Rui says that she couldn't have done this alone, that Wes must have been involved. Mykel then says to Rui that they should have warned Zion about Wes a lot sooner. Maybe they could have prevented this, but Rui says that they tried many times, which if you look back they actually did, they were just interrupted. But they were just too worried that he'd glitch out again and revert to his initial evil programming, because if he knew the truth and had all of Wes's memories flood back in, he would most likely want to follow through with Wes's plans. Which makes even more sense now that you know that Wes has been leading Neo Team Cypher all along, and Zion had his memories. Hence why they were so hesitant to tell him the truth after he started glitching. Starting to panic, Rui asks Mykel what can they do now. Mykel says continue to fight, because there's not much else they can do. There would then be a short scene of Twyla arriving at Neo Team Cypher's headquarters, strutting in as she owns a place, barking orders, because she's now in charge. Gonzap asks who died to make her queen, and she then turns and responds,
"Why, Wes, of course. May he rest in pieces."
Gonzap, unsure what to say and somewhat scared of her, asks why she thinks he would take orders from the likes of her, and then she throws out Shadow Lugia. Gonzap then falls into line as she then says everything will continue as planned, and that she wants to continue with the final step of their operation, but before being able to do so, they need Chatham, as the Totem Corporation's tech plays a vital role in this plan. So Twyla tells Gonzap and the Cypher Goons to make themselves useful and orders them to bring Chatham to her. The game would then cut to a quick cutscene of Chatham and Namid in Totem Tower working together on a new and improved device to try to capture Shadow Deoxys after the last one failed in the desert. They're even laughing and having some good bonding, despite Namid still being upset with her father for being involved with Neo Team Cypher, but he appears to try to be making up for it. This family moment, however, is interrupted by Cowboy Boone, who barges in. Namid asks what Boone is doing here, as she last saw him in Isola Town after working together with Zion to defeat Shadow Gengar, and he said he was planning on leaving Neo Cypher and hiding out with his family until the coast was clear. Boone then claims he had every intention of doing so, but can't live like that, on the run, always looking over his shoulder. It wouldn't be fair to his family. So he claims he has them hiding away somewhere safe, but rather than hiding, he wants to help fight and stop Neo Cypher from seeing their plan of world domination through. A plan that, much like Chatham, he wasn't truly aware of when agreeing to help Neo Cypher, because he too was manipulated by Wes. So Namid, having told Boone back in Isola Town that her father Chatham was also manipulated and even threatened by Neo Cypher, inspired Boone to try to team up with Chatham, as together they may be able to stop them from within, as they must know something between the two of them they don't want them knowing. And now that you know that Wes is the leader of Neo Team Cypher, I think it makes sense that people as good as Chatham and Boone would side with him or believe his lies, because Wes was probably seen as a hero after the events of the first game, Pokemon Coliseum, because he seemingly saved the region and stopped Team Cypher. So I'm sure most people in the Orre region would assume him to be a hero. And he also managed to convince Rui to help him in the first game because he needed her aura reading abilities, despite his affiliations with Team Snag'em and having stolen their tech. I mean, if you ask me, the dude always looked kind of shady, so the girl clearly likes a bad boy, but I think for someone like that to have people follow him so blindly, they must have some sort of charisma to them. So I imagine that being the case for Wes. He probably comes off as a real nice guy despite his tough exterior. And once that nice guy act wears off, I see him threatening people, as he clearly did both Chatham and Boone's families later on in their operations. As once again, he has also proved himself to be quite powerful after single-handedly defeating both Team Snag'em and Cypher in the first game. So I can see why people would be scared of him. Anyways, this conversation between Chatham and Boone is cut short as Cypher Goons start barging in to the lab after them, telling them that Twyla has requested to see them both to continue with the next phase of their plan. Chatham then says he doesn't work for them anymore, in which case Namid, proud of her father, says take that. Gonzap then walks in and says that Twyla said if they weren't willing to comply, they would have to take them by force. Boone says good luck with that, pointing his Poké Pistol at them. Namid then says that this is all very cool and all, but they're kind of outnumbered and cornered, which is the case. So Chatham then takes the screwdriver out of her hand and throws it through the lab window, breaking it, before letting out his bravery as all of them hop on board and fly out of the Totem Tower. Gonzap then throws out his Skarmory and goes flying after them through Neo Quinny City, flying through the streets and past the various skyscrapers in an epic aerial cutscene, until Chatham, who obviously knows the city like the back of his hand, is able to make a sharp turn and hide away, escaping them. The game would then cut back to Mykel and Rui in Phoenix City as they assume the worst, as they still can't get hold of Zion, as he is completely off the grid. They then hear a knock at the door, and it turns out to be none other than Champion Odin from the Furin region. Obviously knowing who he is, Rui asks what he's doing here. As she's surprised, she doesn't know him, and he responds saying, "I found a couple stragglers," as Mummion and Drekion run in excitement to see her. She is really confused and then asks where Zion is. But before she can really finish her sentence, Wes appears with Zion's lifeless corpse in his arms. She looks as if she's seen a ghost, before really paying attention to Zion, who has a giant hole in his chest, asking if Twyla did this, and Wes then replies saying, "No, I did." Rui says she doesn't understand, and Mykel asks if that's the case, then why is he here? Wes then says he isn't here by choice. He explains before Cidadark Isle blew up. Shortly after Twyla flew off on Shadow Lugia, Champion Odin appeared from the sky with Idlodin as he was looking for Twyla, because as most of you know, who watched my King's Bounty DLC video for the Furin region, Champion Odin is her grandfather and adopted Twyla, and he's been looking for her ever since she betrayed him and ran off at the end of the Furin saga. While just missing her and discovering the dire circumstances, Odin and Idlodin rescued both Wes and Zion's corpse, as he was just gonna rescue Wes, but Mummion and Drekion, worried, directed Odin to the volcano's pit, urging them to save Zion as well. Wes, with no other options, our time, had no choice but to comply and go with Odin, who obviously flew here to Phoenix City. Rui then puts Zion's body down and gets up and pushes Wes, furious at him, saying he has no right to be here and to leave. As the previous chapter suggested, there was a fallout between the two of these characters, and if you actually go back and watch the previous chapters, a lot of you presumed Wes to be dead because of the language and wording I used, or Rui or Mykel used rather, when talking about Wes, because they wanted to avoid Zion finding out the truth and reverting back to his previous programming. But, that wording, if you listen carefully, actually foreshadows this. Basically, he was dead to Rui because he betrayed her. She found out his true intentions, and that he used her for her abilities in the first game, why he really stole the Snag Machine and took down Team Snagum and Cypher, because like the original creators hinted at for the direction they were going to go in the sequel, they said it was more about power for Wes, so it would be the same case for this story. He just really wanted power. And that's actually why he was gone and missing for the events of Gale of Darkness, because he was actually leading Team Cypher all the way back then from the shadows, not Greevil. The whole Greevil thing was a setup, so he can continue to operate Team Cypher from the shadows, without any suspicion, which is my way of explaining why he wasn't in the second game and everything that's gone on between now and then. So Rui found out, she felt betrayed, because obviously she thought they were really close friends, they went through an adventure together, and I think we've all assumed that there was kind of like a romantic thing going on between the two, so this had to have really hurt her. And as Wes mentioned in the first scene, he did offer her to join him because he did actually care about her, and her abilities are very useful as she can see Shadow Pokémon, but obviously she's a very good person and she couldn't comply with such a scheme, which is why she feels like he is dead to her, and things ended like they did between the two of them. But Wes then says, like it or not, Twyla has Zion's core, which is the key to her plan, and she will continue this plan without him. They're running out of time and have to stop her. Mykel, once again confused, says he doesn't understand, isn't this still his plan? Weston tells him that she betrayed him, and plans to finish what she started in the Furin saga and destroy the world now rather than dominate it. Rui, upset with Wes, chuckles, saying, "Oh well, she used you," implying she used him, saying that's what Wes did to her. And then she says, "How could you trust someone so outwardly two-faced?" saying the name says it all. Champion Odin, however, chimes in saying there's no time for jokes or bickering, that Twyla is dangerous. Mykel asks how he knows that, in which case Champion Odin tells him that he is her grandfather, and Mykel says he thought she was a Laverina clone because she told him that in one of the previous chapters, and Odin will quickly say that he is aware of that, and that he adopted her, trying to give her a better life, in which case Rui says, "Yeah, look how well that turned out for everyone." Also, for those of you familiar with the Furin saga, you're probably wondering why Champion Odin has the divine and omniscient Pokemon Idlodin still, despite now belonging to the Furin protagonist Eric, and the reason is because Eric, knowing Odin was searching for Twyla, lent him Idlodin one last time for this journey, so he could not only find her, but stop her once and for all. Mykel then tries to take a look at Zion's robotic corpse, seeing if he can fix him. Wes, seeing that Rui clearly wants to hash things out, says not here and to meet him alone at the Orre Coliseum. Mykel asks if she's comfortable doing that, and she nods her head, saying she can handle him. Mykel then says he'll do his best to repair Zion, but Wes tells him there's no hope without the core. Mykel then reminds Wes that he's been able to surpass Wes's expectations for the Shadow Slayer bot before when he programmed Wes's humanity into it, something that no one thought was possible, and to not underestimate him. Wes and Rui then leave, and Mykel tells her to be careful and not to trust a word he says. Odin then tells Mykel he plans to continue looking for Twyla, but before he leaves, Chatham, Namid, and Boone appear on Bravery, saying that they're running out of time. Neo Cypher is making their big move, in which case Mykel responds, saying they already know. Namid, then noticing Champion Odin, starts by saying who is this guy, before realizing who he is and fangirling over him, asking for his autograph, in which case her father Chatham will tell her now is not the time. She will then ask why he's here, in which case Mykel will say it's a long story, but at the same time Odin will respond saying he's her grandfather, in which case Namid will gasp and say, oh, so the plot thickens. Mykel asks what Boone is doing here, as last time he checked he was one of the bad guys, and Namid will then say he's here to help. Mykel then asks Chatham, as head of Totem Corporation, what the next step of their plan entails. Chatham says he's unsure where the Shadow device is located. He was never disclosed that information, but the Totem Corporation was tasked to build a Robo Rayquaza like the Robo Kyogre and Groudon in the first game. And this Robo Rayquaza was built in order to travel to space. So considering that, Twyla and Neo Team Cypher need him for the next phase of their plan, it would make sense if they were hiding it in the Totem Corporation space station, as they need his code in order to activate Robo Rayquaza. In which case Namid, shocked and excited, says, we have a space station? As she is obsessed with space, and is probably wondering why her father never told her that. Boone says that sounds about right, but from what he was told, the final phase would take place on top of the infamous Mount Battle, so that must be where Robo Rayquaza is located, and they plan to launch from. Chatham says that certainly would make sense, but Boone says that the mountain will be swarming with Cypher grunts, so they need to be prepared to fight. Mykel says if that's the case, they will need Zion's help, as they are the one who's defeated all the Shadow Warp Pokemon and Cypher so far, and if that anyone can stop them, it's Zion, as they also share Wes's memories, so if they can manage to get those back, they'll know everything they need to know to foil their plans. Boone says that's true, but they're running out of time, and then if that's the case, he needs to hurry. Chatham then says that Robo Rayquaza isn't operational without his passcode, so they literally can't continue without him, so that should buy them enough time. Namid says if that's true, they need to get him somewhere safe, so Neo Cypher doesn't find him, as she offers to take him to the secret Fennec catacombs underneath Fennec City, as it will be safe there, since no one really knows about these catacombs, which are a new location I created for this game, with a relic stone like the one Cypher destroyed in the Relic Cave, along with the Purify Chamber to prevent Shadow Pokemon from being purified, as their former plan for domination was dependent on the Shadow virus running rampant through the region, so they profit off the sale of snag machines to criminal organizations worldwide. Chatham, unaware such a place exists, says that's a good idea. Boone says he will go with them, but Mykel says he doesn't trust him, to wait here with him. Boone then tells Mykel, listen Pipsqueak, you don't have to trust me, but don't tell me what to do, I'm done taking orders. Namid says not to worry, and they run off to the catacombs, agreeing to meet there as soon as Zion is operational again. Mykel says he will make sure to bring Rui too after she finishes her business with Wes at the Orre Coliseum. Speaking of which, the game would then cut to the Orre Coliseum where Rui stumbles into the center of the stadium to meet Wes, the location being symbolic of their relationship and trials throughout the first game, Pokemon Coliseum, and somewhat poetic as they're now battling on opposite sides, and this is an arena, and they do exactly that here, as Wes says he understands she's upset with him, but he has always cared for her, that much was true, and he knows she cares for him too, that they have to put their differences aside and work together once more to stop Twyla. And then Rui says, and then what? You will give her the boot, take back your rightful place as Cypher leader, and continue with your original plan for world domination, even with all these lives at stake? Wes then gives her a little bit of his backstory, telling her why he is the way he is, and joined Team Snag'em in the first place. Something he's never told her before, so he's really opening up. Basically, he grew up in the Under, along with a bunch of criminals, and scrounging the streets, stealing things as that was the only way he could get by. And he was really good at it, but he was always viewed as trash or a lowlife. And he hated that. It made him angry as he didn't ask for this life. His skill set and anger led him to join Team Snag'em, as working for them made him feel powerful for once, as they were feared by most, even respected in a sense, which is all he ever really wanted, to be seen as someone special, or at least not a nobody. No one ever really made him feel that way until he met Rui, of course, which is what he tells her. But he's always had this thirst for power because of this, and the more power he got, the more he wanted, which is why he decided to steal the snag machine for himself and seek it out. especially as he knew he could use this device to take over the Orre region by capturing all these Shadow Pokémon and even take down Cypher and look like a hero to the people of the Orre region. But all this fame and respect wasn't enough, as he originally thought it would be. So he used this power to join Team Cypher, which was quite easy to do after his conquest in the first game, convincing Greevil he was calling all the shots and even going along with his plan, but hiding in the shadows, orchestrating their demise once again so he could rebuild the group under his control after most everyone thought Cypher was no longer a threat. That way the group could truly operate from the shadows until it was time to strike and unleash their plan. That's why Wes wasn't present for Gale of Darkness, and Twyla was a necessary part of his plan, as she was a Lavrina clone, and therefore one of Cypher's most valuable members, having created Shadow Lugia with her experiments and discovering the true extent of the Shadow Virus, even leading to the blueprint of the Shadow Slayer with her work. Rui at first was part of his plan due to her abilities, which is how he used her in the first game, as these abilities made her a big asset, but he really did value her and their time together, the closer they got, which is why he eventually told her the truth about his real plans, thinking that she would join him. But obviously she's a good guy and she could never stand for something like that, and she felt betrayed by him and even used by him, because he was lying to her all this time, and took advantage of her abilities to read aura, using them to help further his plan without her even knowing. So she couldn't help him any further, and obviously that's where their friendship fell apart, and why she said Zion is basically all that was left of him. Because the Wes she knew, the good guy, the hero, doesn't exist anymore, he's dead to her. Wes then says he understands she's upset, but now is not the time. The enemy of my enemy is my friend, and we are on the same side here now, like it or not. If you and your friends don't want to work with me, please don't stand in my way. Rui then says she won't sit back this time, she will stop him, as she throws out her Lucario, in which case Wes throws out Espeon and Umbreon. But Zion's Mummyon and Drekion then release himself from their Pokeballs on Wes's belt, but to Rui's side, as they want to fight alongside Rui now to avenge Zion. Wes, unamused, says suit yourselves, as Rui returns her Lucario to its Pokeball, and a tag battle between Wes and Rui, with Umbreon and Espeon versus Mummyon and Drekion, would commence. And you'd technically be playing as Rui. I thought this would be cool, as no Pokemon game has ever let you switch perspectives and play as another character before, and this is now a common thing in various other video game franchises. Plus, it is still technically the same Mummyon and Drekion you started the game with your moveset, etc., so you're not exactly starting from scratch or changing that much. Anyways, after this battle, despite having more Pokemon on his team, and legendaries at that, Wes says he's had enough. He can't waste any more time, and that maybe in another life, they could still be friends. In which case, Rui replies saying he made his decision and he has to live with it. He clearly isn't the person she thought he was. Wes will then reply saying she knows him better than anyone else. She isn't sure what to do and tries to stop him, but he throws out a smoke bomb and manages to get away, as he presumably goes after Twyla on his own. Rui then calls Mykel to check in and see how things are going with Zion. Mykel says he managed to get him operational again, but he has none of his or Wes's memories now. He's been completely rebooted, but he says he can at least reprogram him to work on their side once again. But Wes was sadly right, without his core, there's no way of truly restoring him. Even if they could manage to get it back from Twyla, they have no way of stopping him without Wes's memories, which they have no way of recovering now. Let alone would still have to wonder if regaining all of Wes's memories and knowing the truth would have Zion revert to his original programming and betray them. Rui obviously is really upset after hearing this, and Mummyon and Drekion, who are still out of their Pokeballs, as well, as Rui goes to comfort them. Mykel then says he wishes there was another way, but looks like they'll have to continue on without Zion, and then he tells her about the group's plans to meet in the Fennec Catacombs. Rui will then say, "That's it! The Fennec Catacombs, I have an idea!" saying that the mythical Pokemon, the Wishmaker Jirachi, is said to live down there, granting people's wishes in times of need, as a nod to the fact that Celebi was associated with the Relic Stone in the Relic Cave in the other games. Rui says if they can somehow manage to find Jirachi in the Catacombs and plead to it to grant them a wish, they may be able to save Zion and stop Cypher. Mykel says if and only if this crazy plan actually works, they will most likely only get one shot, so it better be one heck of a wish. She then confidently replies saying she knows exactly what to wish for. As they go to meet the team down in the Fennec Catacombs, where Namid, Chatham, and Boone are already waiting as they hide from Team Cypher. You'd actually play as a rebooted Zion in this section. With all your same Pokemon, Zion just wouldn't have their personality or any of their memories. so their movement in the overworld would be slower and more robotic as a result to represent this. And given the fact they still have a big gaping hole in their chest and damage done internally, despite Mykel's best effort to patch it up, there would still be some glitching as well. Rui will then show up to inform them all of her plan involving Jirachi and using its wish-granting powers to help them stop Team Cypher. Odin, who's also here at this point, says it's quite risky, asking the divine and omniscient Pokemon Loden if that's possible, and then Loden replies saying that it is indeed, but it will not be easy to find Jirachi. It doesn't often show itself, but given the dire circumstances, if it were to ever appear, now would be the time. Boone, however, thinks this is a ridiculous plan with too many what-ifs, in which case Rui says her aura reading abilities may actually be able to help them find it. Mykel says that's a genius idea and that his and Zion's aura readers should do the trick as well, as the three of you agree to split up after Jirachi. Odin then says he's going to continue to mount battle to see if he can stop or at least talk any sense into Twyla on his own. As he leaves, you'd then search the catacombs for Jirachi, but then there would be a cutscene of Team Cypher barging into the catacombs, demanding Chatham to come with them, as the Mid and Chatham are shocked that they managed to find them here, but willing to fight. However, Boone will then step in front of them, siding with Cypher, saying not to resist, revealing that he has actually been working with Cypher all along, and was only pretending otherwise to get closer to them and foil their plans of retaliation. But he says quite frankly he's not worried, as he thinks they're going on a wild goose chase, so they can have at it as long as it keeps them out of the way. The Mid, hurt by his betrayal, says, "How could you?" She thought he had really changed. And Boone says he is sorry, he really did have every intention of leaving Cypher, but before he could, Twyla found him and his family, and is holding them hostage, saying if he was scared of what Wes would do to them, that she promised she'd do far worse, and that he has to protect them at whatever cost. Chatham, obviously upset, says as a father he understands, and tells the Mid he's sorry, but they can't take them themselves, and that they have to comply as he can't let anything happen to her. He'd never forgive himself, and then she replies saying if he does this, that she will never forgive him. Hurt by this, he stoically says that's a decision I'm gonna have to live with, my child, as he leaves with Team Cypher, and she starts crying, begging him not to. But then Gonzap grabs her, saying don't worry, you're coming with us, as leverage, as they haul her away too. You'd then continue exploring the catacombs as a soulless Zion in search of Jirachi, but now also have to contend with and battle several Cypher grunts along the way, as they're clearly surprised to see the Shadow Slayer is up and running again after hearing it was destroyed, so they want to capture you and bring you back to Twyla. Rui and Mykel will appear after defeating a couple of them, saying if they're here that means they most likely found Chatham, and that they're much closer to receiving the passcode to activate Robo Rayquaza, so they have to find him before it's too late. But before they leave, soulless Zion will make a sound as their aura reader detects something, and Mykel and Rui double check to see what's going on as they detect a powerful aura, hoping it's Jirachi. And Rui says it can't be, as that's the aura of a Shadow Pokémon. But then, lo and behold, Jirachi does appear, but as a mutated Shadow Warp Pokemon. As Mykel says, be careful what you wish for. Rui asks how that's possible if these catacombs are blocked off from people. Mykel says just because people don't normally access these catacombs doesn't mean various Pokemon and the Dark Contagion couldn't make their way down here, especially with how fast it's spreading. They both agree that this obviously isn't good, and that if they have any chance of getting it to grant their wish, they have to first defeat and snag it, and then obviously use the relic stone inside these catacombs to purify it. Mykel says luckily we still have a Shadow Slayer, as he kind of like puts his hand on Zion's shoulder, but Zion, obviously being a soulless robot at this point, doesn't really respond at all. But of course Mykel keeps forgetting that. But Zion will then activate and eyes will go red as it wants to capture Shadow Jirachi anyways, as you'd once again play as Zion for this boss battle. Moving a lot slower in the overworld and auto attack sections, making this boss battle a lot more challenging, as Shadow Jirachi is quite fast, flying around the cavern and at times even teleporting, making it hard to land your attacks. But luckily both Rui's Lucario and Mykel's Jolteon would also be helping you in the auto attack sections with Aura Sphere and Thunderbolt attacks to try to hit it. Jirachi's overworld attacks would be Psychic, using it to hurl boulders from the cavern at you, Swift, shooting razor-sharp stars at you, which are impossible to evade, a powerful Flash Cannon attack where it bursts out a beam of light at you, and a charged Shadow Star, which is a new signature Shadow attack and essentially a Shadow version of its signature move, Doom Desire, that if you don't stop in time using action commands, the screen would flash white and you'd automatically would lose the battle. And as I just mentioned, you'd also once again have the cinematic action commands throughout the battle, which allow you to do more damage outside the traditional turn-based sections if you manage to hit the buttons in time. Both Jolteon and Lucario would also be involved in these action command sections, working alongside your Mummion and Drakion to help trap and defeat Shadow Jirachi. After working together to finally do so, you'd be able to snag it and shortly afterwards purify it at the relic stone in the catacombs. But before doing so, the game would cut to a quick cutscene between Odin and his granddaughter Twyla on Mount Battle as he flies down on Lodin and try to talk to her on the peak of this mountain, in which case she will reply, "Not you again, what does a girl have to do to get a little privacy around here?" Odin will then plead to Twyla and her humanity, saying he knows there is good in her. The child he raised was a loving one, and now that he is aware that the darkness within her was unlocked by the Chaos Crown, he is confident that her better half can prevail. Her better half would then appear, happy to see her grandfather pleading for his help, in which case the darker half, aka Lavrina, would resurface, saying pathetic, "I can't believe you fell for that. I have some pressing business to attend to, and you're clearly no match for me, old man. You never were, so I suggest you leave before things get ugly." And Odin will say he loves her and will never give up on her, in which case there would be a short cutscene of her sending out Shadow Lugia as it and Lodin would fly around in the air above the battlefield fighting. You'd even get to hit some action command buttons in this section, so you're not just watching the scene and you're actually involved in the fight. But Shadow Lugia ultimately wins, as its attacks are a lot more ruthless than Lodin's, and Twyla is able to distract Lodin, saying, "What happened to being almighty and omniscient? Did you not see this coming?" As her Absol and Retri have her grandfather Odin cornered at the edge of the battlefield ready to push him into the lava, distracting Lodin long enough for Shadow Lugia to finish it off, leaving Champion Odin defenseless as Twyla orders Cypher Goons to seize him. One of the grunts gives her Lodin's Master Ball. She looks at it, saying she can't believe she once wanted to own this Pokemon, rolling her eyes as she's unimpressed. You'd then cut back to the Fennec Catacombs, where you'd have to find the relic stone to purify the recently snagged Shadow Jirachi, and once you do, it would trigger another cutscene where Jirachi would be purified, and Grateful would want to help both Mykel and Rui out by granting them a wish. So Rui would make her big wish, the wish being for Zion to be fully restored with all of their memories and humanity intact, but not as a robot, but a real human being. Mamion and Drekion are shocked by this wish, and Mykel asks if that's even possible, as they look at each other in joy, with tears in their eyes, as they hope it comes true and they're reunited with their master. Jirachi will then close its eyes, opening the third eye on its chest, as it floats up into the air, and the screen would then go white, and a bunch of glowing orbs would float around the cavern, with the water glistening. Mykel and Rui will then turn to look at Zion, who is fully healed, as there would be a close-up of Zion as he opens his eyes, but they're no longer mechanical looking like they've been in the past. Zion, now with his memories intact, will look down at his human hands in amazement as he can feel a big difference. And then Mamion and Drekion, ecstatic to see him back, would both then lunge into his arms sobbing, as tears would then proceed to roll down Zion's face as he holds them tight, saying that he missed them both so much and that his heart really does beat for them, as a callback to what he said in the previous chapter, saying he didn't have a heart, but if he did, it would beat for them. Mykel and Rui are touched by this, and also happy to see Zion back, as they both join in, along with Lucario, for a group hug. But Mykel will say ouch as his Jolteon tries to join in as well, and pokes him with its spikes, and they will all begin to laugh, including Jirachi, before Zion gets serious and says that they don't have a lot of time, they have to get to the top of Mount Battle, as he tells them he now remembers everything, and he even has all of Wes's memories prior to his creation back as well, meaning he knows exactly how to stop them. But thankfully, now that he's human, he doesn't have to worry about being reverted back to any kind of programming and being a device, which is exactly why Rui made that wish. Now himself once again, Zion says before they head to Mount Battle, he has something he needs to do. As you head to the outskirts stand, where he knows he'll find Wes, given they share the same memories and think similarly. Wes is there preparing to raid Mount Battle himself and battling his inner demons. Shocked to see Zion, who puts his hand on his shoulders and looks him dead in the eyes. A tear rolls down Zion's face as he knows exactly what Wes is going through, and Wes, seeing Zion is now human, appears like he's going to break down, but then backs up and says, "If you're here to stop me, you're too late. You know better than anyone we have to go through with this." And Zion replies, saying that he knows better than anyone that they don't. It's not too late to make amends. Everyone will forgive him over time. Rui will forgive him. But Wes isn't willing to talk about it any longer and challenges you to a double battle using his full team, which not only consists of the 3 legendary dogs, but a 4th legendary dog I created for my Legends Elimage project, in vein of the 4th Weather Genie in Pokemon Legends Arceus. This legendary dog being a poison type, but can also learn a variety of grass type moves. But more on that Pokemon later, as this project is coming up quite soon. Anyways, after defeating Wes, he will fall to his knees and look at his hands, trembling unsure what to do from here. Zion will slowly walk across the sand to him as there would be a wide shot of the outskirts stand, with the sand blowing across the screen dramatically as Zion offers out his hand, saying, "Let's save the Orre region for real this time." Wes pushes his hand away and says, "I know you think we are the same, but we are not. You started as nothing more than ones and zeros, made up of my memories. You didn't live through them like I did. You couldn't possibly understand," as he grabs a motorbike from the stand and zooms off towards Mount Battle, leaving Zion in the dust. You'd then head back to Mount Battle, where you'd battle even more Cypher Grunts, as well as have to battle all of the admins again with updated teams, starting with Musclehead Gonzap, including Mirror B, who will tell you he was dragged into the final phase by Twyla against his will and is quite upset as he has a performance he was really excited for tonight at his club. With Boone being the last one you battle, as he says he is genuinely happy to see Zion is okay, unaware of the fact he's now actually a human, but that he has no choice but to stop you as his family is in danger. Twyla has them, Namid, and Odin all in a device hanging over a lava pit in order to keep both Boone and Chatham in line. After defeating Boone, Twyla above, now finally having the code to Robo Rayquaza from Chatham, will say, "You are no longer any use to me," meaning either are they, as she will hit the button to the device holding Namid and Boone's family, dropping them into the pit of lava. But before landing in the magma, Entei will jump across the screen, catching all of them on its back, as it's revealed to be Wes's. Twyla is shocked, as Wes appears behind her now that she's distracted, grabbing Zion's core out of her hand. She then says, "I see you made it out alive as well. What a pity, I guess I'll have to finish the job this time," as she throws out Shadow Lugia, and Wes throws out Raikou. There would be a cutscene of Shadow Lugia battling Raikou on Mount Battle, with action commands for you to hit, with the battle being interrupted by Shadow Deoxys, who appears out of nowhere, crashing into Raikou, blasting it across the battlefield into a cliff as it goes to attack Wes, who is still holding Zion's core, causing him to drop the core as he goes to dodge the attack. The core then rolls across the metal platform, as it appears like it's about to fall off into the magma, but before it does, Twyla will grab it, and then smiles saying, "I knew you'd come for this," as she holds up Zion's core. As I established in the previous chapter, Shadow Deoxys is drawn to and upset by it, much like the Shadow device that it activates, as they attract the Dark Contagion and all Shadow Pokémon, which is why Zion, being the Shadow Slayer, was attacked by and constantly battling all of the Shadow Warp Pokémon throughout the story. Shadow Deoxys will then lunge at Twyla, who doesn't move a muscle, as she will use the newly improved device Chatham and Namid were working on to successfully capture Shadow Deoxys. Namid watching from below, shouting "hey" as she's upset that she stole their tech. Twyla will then watch as Shadow Deoxys is constantly trying to change forms to break free from this device, confidently walking towards it saying not to wear itself out after all, it will play a vital role in her plan as she snags it with her snag machine. In which case everyone looks shocked, especially Wes, who then lets out Suicune to help fight, but Shadow Lugia will then fly back down, protecting Twyla. Zion will then tell Wes to leave it to him, as you then battle Twyla, starting out as a double battle between her Absol and Retri, as well as her Reshiram and Zekrom from the Fearon's Battle Frontier, as Frontier Brains have legendaries, and plenty of trainers from the Orre Region games have also used legendaries before. But after defeating Twyla in this fierce double battle, you'd have a boss battle against Shadow Lugia, which would function like the rest of the boss battles against Shadow Warp Pokemon. Anyways, this battle once again would consist of auto attacks and some cinematic action commands outside of the turn-based style sections of battle, but of course you'd also have to avoid Shadow Lugia's powerful attacks in the overworld as it flies around out of reach of most of your auto attacks and swoops down to try to knock you off the platform into the magma below, which would obviously automatically end the battle, with its most powerful attack being a powerful Shadow Blast attack, its signature Shadow attack that is guaranteed to knock you off the platform if you don't manage to hit the action command button or dodge it in time. After defeating Shadow Lugia, there would be a cutscene where it appears to have a little more fight in it, as it starts to spread its wings as if it's about to attack again, but Mykel then runs in front of you with his arms wide open, pleading to his former Pokemon to stop fighting them and to instead fight the darkness. Shadow Lugia slowly starts to move towards Mykel as if it's about to attack him, but there would be a close-up of his face and then Lugia's as it seemingly recognizes him, and while still infected by the Shadow virus, leans its head into him as he pets it, saying he knew his Pokemon was still in there, as he then uses his snag machine to snag it back, kissing the snag ball after it's inside, saying "welcome home, my friend." Twyla will then say how disgusting, as she takes the core and makes her way to the control panel using the passcode she retrieved from Chatham to activate Robo Rayquaza, as Mount Battle starts to shake and everyone reacts as a giant door opens in the mountain and Robo Rayquaza slowly starts to rise on a mechanized platform towards Twyla, who enters the giant spacecraft and flies off into space. And for anyone wondering how she knows how to operate it, don't forget Twyla has been shown multiple times in both series and the Firen Saga to be excellent with technology, which only makes sense as she's a Lovrina clone. Anyways, just as Robo Rayquaza launches off into the sky, Mykel will throw out his Shadow Lugia, asking if it has enough juice in it to help them get up into the ship, as Mykel and Zion will climb on its back, followed by Wes, much to their surprise, but they don't question it as they know they'll need all the help they can get. Shadow Lugia will fly them into the base of Robo Rayquaza, undetected by Twyla, as they close off the area they entered from before exiting the atmosphere and entering into space, which would be shown in a cutscene of Robo Rayquaza in space, landing on the Totem Corporation's Pokeball-shaped space station, where Twyla would strut off the ship and towards the Shadow device to finish the final phase of her plan. But Zion, Wes, and Mykel would all exit behind her, standing side by side, saying not so fast. Twyla turns around, both surprised and annoyed they managed to get on board, as she throws out her newly snagged Shadow Deoxys to distract them as she makes her way towards the Shadow device with Zion's core. You then have a boss battle against Shadow Deoxys once more, this time constantly switching between all 4 of its forms, both in the overworld and traditional turn-based style sections of this battle, completely changing fighting styles and tactics every time, making for an unpredictable battle. And both Wes using Espeon and Umbreon, as well as Mykel using Jolteon, would assist you in the battle, not only performing auto attacks on Shadow Deoxys in the overworld sections, but in most of the cinematic action command sections as well, as all 3 of the series protagonists would team up and fight side by side in this epic boss battle through the space station, with the final action command having Drakion lure Shadow Deoxys into one of the sections of the space station so Mumyon can hit the button, having a metal door shut closing it in that section of the space station with Shadow Deoxys trapped inside. Then they would hit another button, launching that section off into space. Convinced Shadow Deoxys will no longer be a problem. Mykel will be all excited afterwards, saying how awesome that was, giving Zion a big high five. As Zion, still not used to being human, says ouch and looks at his hand as it clearly hurt. Mykel in the moment even tries to give Wes a high five immediately afterwards, but Wes, not amused, leaves him hanging, saying they all have to stop Twyla, as there would be a cutscene of you finding Twyla and the device, but it's too late. She's already put Zion's core inside of it and activated it. But the strange thing is, it's not pointing out the massive dome-like window of the space station towards the stars where it could attract a meteor, but rather right at the 3 protagonists. Mykel immediately questions why this is, looks back to see Shadow Deoxys, who obviously escaped its pod. She then fires the device at them as they all duck for cover and the beam of dark energy hits her Shadow Deoxys behind them. She then says she told them all Shadow Deoxys was a part of her master plan. She then reveals she plans to use this device's control over the darkness not to attract more meteorites to destroy the world like they assumed, but to merge the darkness within her from the Chaos Crown with Shadow Deoxys, as it seems to work similarly to the Dark Contagion, as she then states that Shadow Deoxys has proven itself to be the perfect Pokemon and vessel with all of its various forms, and that she wants to merge with it so she can destroy the world herself and watch it burn. By the way, this darkness within her activated her memories and personality as Lovrina, as those are dormant inside her as a clone, and Lovrina was called truly terrifying in Gale of Darkness, but this is more so the results of the darkness from the Chaos Crown and the legendary Frostfire trapped within it. And since Frostfire, being based on Surtur, was obsessed with destruction, that's why Twyla is so hellbent on destroying the world, even though that was never Lovrina's memo. So Twyla would then use this machine to separate the dark entity from within her, leaving the real or good Twyla purified in the process, as Zion would rush to her side, and she'd be thankful to be free of the darkness. But this moment of happiness is all cut short, as the darkness that once consumed her is merged with Shadow Deoxys thanks to the device, which much to everyone's surprise unlocks a brand new form in the process, Ultimate Form. Deoxys' new ultimate form is not only much stronger than all of its previous forms, but a lot bigger, as it's been enhanced by the darkness within her originating from the Chaos Crown. So the final boss battle of the game would be against Shadow Deoxys in its colossal ultimate form, in this massive dome within the center of the space station, as once again all three protagonists, Wes, Mykel, and Zion, would team up for both the auto attack sections and action command sections of this battle, but the traditional turn-based style sections would be left to you, aka Zion. So I hope you have some of your Shadow Pokemon or powerful Shadow Warp Pokemon you've snagged handy for this fight, as they will be your best bet against this Titan, thanks to how Shadow moves work. Because Shadow moves are super effective against all other Pokemon except other Shadow Pokemon. So while your Shadow Warp Pokemon's signature Shadow moves wouldn't be super effective against Shadow Deoxys, at least its Shadow moves wouldn't be super effective against you, because otherwise Deoxys would blow through your team. And auto attacks will do next to nothing against Shadow Deoxys unless you manage to get close enough to hit its core, which is done by climbing the spiral staircase or platforms that wrap around the stone within the space station, but Deoxys will use its tentacles to knock you off back down to the ground level, which will do some serious fall damage depending on the height you fall from, so be careful. As usual, the best way to win this battle outside of the turn-based style sections would be by using the cinematic action commands, which would be epic as ever, with all three heroes fighting side by side against its final foe, with the final action command being Mykel figuring out how the Shadow device works to try to separate Twyla from Shadow Deoxys once more, but it fails as Deoxys lashes out one of its tentacles, completely destroying the device before they can finish separating them, causing one last beam of dark energy to launch out of the device and glass dome into space as the device is destroyed. All seems lost as Mykel frantically asks what now. Wes and Zion, being the same person in a sense, or at least sharing the same memories, exchange a glance as they know exactly what the other's thinking and what to do. As Wes says it's still a Shadow Pokemon, and Zion, finishing his sentence, says, meaning we can snag it, as he uses his snag machine one last time to create a snag ball as all of their Pokemon attack the already weakened Shadow Deoxys at the same time, with Mummion and Drekion delivering the final blow, as Zion then throws the snag ball in a drawn out scene where it almost looks like it fails and is about to break free, but stops as it's successfully caught, and with it Twyla's darker half, as she's still fused with it. The three of them are ecstatic as the battle is finally over, and Wes even offers Mykel a high five this time, which he contemplates but ends up accepting. But the celebrations are cut short as the alarms within the space station go off, alerting them of an incoming asteroid that is in range of impact, which would completely destroy the space station if making contact. They all look out the dome into the infinite void of space to see the final dark beam sent out from the device as it was being destroyed has attracted a nearby meteorite with the dark contagion as it's hurtling towards the space station. Mykel runs towards the command deck of the station, saying the asteroid is humongous and large enough that it would not only destroy the space station without losing any real momentum, but is heading straight to Earth and would likely do some catastrophic damage there as well after making impact. Zion asks if there's any sort of defense measures on the station to stop the asteroid. Mykel then turns to purified Twyla, who has always been good with technology, but she says she's sorry she can't help, that was always more of a Lavrina thing. Wes, knowing all about the space station though, because he did lead Team Cypher after all, says that there's nothing on board to stop the asteroid, but if they can make it to Robo Rayquaza in time, there are weapons on there that at the very least would be able to knock it off its trajectory towards the station or Earth. But it's very dangerous as it requires getting extremely close and precise timing. Wes then presses a button telling Zion and Mykel to get into this escape shuttle with Twyla and that he will send them all back down to Earth, that he will operate Robo Rayquaza and take care of it. Mykel, concerned, asks if he's sure about this, and Wes then says yes. Zion, knowing how Wes thinks, says you don't have to do this, and Wes replies saying, I think we both know I do, as if it's kind of a way to seek retribution for his actions, as his initial plans leading Cypher are what led to this mess, even if it isn't how he intended for things to go, as once again, destruction was never really part of his plan, he was more so after power and control. Wes then gives all of his Pokeballs to Zion just in case, as Zion, Mykel, and Purified Twyla all rush towards their shuttle as Wes makes his way back to Robo Rayquaza, but before parting ways, Wes screams across the large room to Zion, telling him to look after Rui and tell her he is sorry. Zion then says to tell her himself. The three of them make it out to the shuttle, where they launch back to Earth, and as they're descending from the darkness of space back to Earth, see what I did there? They watch Wes fly out on Robo Rayquaza towards the asteroid, first launching a powerful Hyper Beam-like blast at the crater, which does make it significantly smaller, but doesn't seem to really affect its momentum as it continues the hurtle towards the station and Earth. You can then see everyone below, Namid, Chatham, and Rui, who is able to see the shadow aura around this massive asteroid, all looking up at the dark sky as it appears to be getting closer and closer to the Earth's atmosphere. But Zion, Mykel, and Twyla are all in shock as the asteroid is about to fly past Robo Rayquaza, as Wes then swirls his commands and jumps in front of it and lets out another Hyper Beam while heading straight into the center of the asteroid with no time to correct himself. There would then be a massive explosion as they make contact, and Zion and Mykel open their eyes as they are thrilled to see the asteroid has been destroyed, with various little pieces of the wreckage floating around space, but are obviously sad to see that Robo Rayquaza is gone, as is Wes. But he did sacrifice himself for the greater good, which is exactly what Zion tells Rui and everyone else after they land back down on Earth. A tear runs down Rui's face as she obviously still cares about Wes and gives Zion a big hug. Zion then tells her that Wes had many regrets, but she was never one of them. She pauses as if to question how exactly he knows that, but remembers he has all of Wes's memories. She then puts her hands on Zion's cheek, saying that she always knew there was good in Wes, and that Zion is living proof of that. However, this tender moment is interrupted by Namid, who says ew, and everyone else laughs and celebrates their victory. But Mykel then reminds them all that the Shadow virus is still running rampant through the Orre region, and there are still plenty of criminals who have already got their hands on snag machines due to Cypher's initial plans. And then Zion says that they will have to stop them together, as Mummion and Drekion both appear by his side. And everyone, including Boone and Chatham, all nod in agreement. And they'd all look up at the dark sky as the screen would fade to black and the credits would begin to roll. But during the credits, there would be a bunch of scenes showing what became of everyone afterwards, acting almost as an epilogue. First, Mirror B back in his club dancing with his Ludicolo, followed by a scene of purified Twyla with her grandfather back in the Furin region, living a seemingly normal life together, with Loki seen in the background acting as their butler, clearing dirty dishes off the table, followed by a scene of Boone taking down criminals using Shadow Pokémon, as he's now fighting on the right side, helping to keep his family and the Orre region safe from Shadow Pokémon and the criminals who seek to control them. And then a scene of Namid and her father Chatham, as she gives him a sweet hug and says this doesn't mean she's forgiven him, that he has a long way to go before earning her trust back. He then tells her that she's right, and in fact he doesn't expect her to forgive him, but rather keep him and the Totem Corporation in line. She asks what he means by this, and he says that she is now officially the co-president of the Totem Corporation. Ecstatic, she lunges into his arms as he spins her around, and she keeps thanking him profusely, saying, "Thank you, Daddy, thank you, Daddy, thank you, Daddy, I won't let you down." As he says, "I know you won't," looking into her eyes as a proud father. Followed by a scene of Mykel and his family at the grand opening of the new Pokemon HQ lab, as it's been rebuilt after being destroyed by Twyla, as Mykel will tell his little sister Jovi, who has a cameo along with her Minin and Plusle, to prepare the purified chamber as it's apparently been rebuilt. And she says, "Yes, Professor," implying Mykel has replaced Professor Crane as the new professor of the Orre region, as Professor Crane was looking to retire after all the guilt he has been carrying after being manipulated by Cypher. You would even see Mykel's Lugia in the background, who has once again been purified. The next scene would then be of now human Zion and Rui sitting together at the edge of the fountain in Phoenix City, as Mummion, Drekion, and her Lucario are splashing around in the fountain behind them. Rui's Sylveon would also join in, as Mummion uses his bandages to push Drekion closer to it as it blushes. Sylveon would then kiss Drekion on the cheek, and it appears to be love-struck before collapsing into the water out of pure joy. Zion jokes saying Drekion clearly has a type, being super effective, as a little reference to it having a crush on Grusha's Glaceon in the 3rd chapter. Rui laughs and then puts her hand over the top of Zion's hand as she asks how it feels to be human. Zion responds saying it's terrifying, as he's never felt so vulnerable or fragile. With the sadness in her eyes, she asks if that's how Wes felt, saying yes, especially around you, as he holds her hand and she leans her head into his shoulder. As they both look up into the sky, grieving Wes, as his silhouette can be seen in the sky above. The screen would then fade to black, but there would be one more cutscene inside Odin's chamber, showing the snag ball with Shadow Deoxys and Twyla's darker half inside of it, as a mysterious hand would then grab it and pull it out of the shot. If you enjoyed the video, please don't forget to show your boy some love and hit that like button, leave a comment down below to let me know what you think, and most importantly, please subscribe to my channel so I can keep it growing. As most of you know by now, while the concepts and designs featured on my channel are all my own, I don't actually draw the artwork featured in my videos, as I have commissioned over 40 talented artists who I work with intimately throughout the creative process down to the tiniest of details, so I can take you on these exciting journeys through my imagination. So please make sure to go follow and support all of them as well. Their links will be provided down below in the description.